When I think about career, the most important thing is you want to be the top of your game. But then to be top of your game, it has to be something you like and something you can do really well. And then the best way to figure that out, I think, is to look at your current job and then break that into tasks. And then I think for most people, I think vast majority of people don't like 100% of the tasks they're doing for that job, right?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Top of the Hunt. Today, we've got Yi Chen with us from CapCo, who's going to talk about his journey from city to a startup. Along the way, he's picked up an MBA, been through an accelerator. He's going to explain to us how he's validated his idea, what it is, and how it can bring value to you. So, without further ado, I'll pass you over to Yi Chen. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
So I grew up in China and I moved to the US for undergrad, where I went to UC Berkeley. So I did statistics. And then after that, I went to work in finance in New York. So I was basically in banking. And then the first 2 years was a rotation program. The other two was just investment banking. Through that experience, there are two things I got out of it. The first is the pain points I'm trying to solve for product that we launch on Product Hunt. And the second is also I realized, unlike other people who enjoy deal making, I actually really enjoy building these tools in spreadsheet, like these models, these automation. So I realized I was a unconventional banker in a way that I'm really a builder. So then I went to Harvard Business School for my MBA. And then after that, I decided I want to be a builder because that's what I realized when I was working in finance. So I first joined a SaaS company called Almanac, also in the productivity tool space. And then afterward, I joined a education tech company also working on software. And then around October 2023, I started my current company called CapCo. And then basically we're building this product to help people automate a lot of menu searches and lead generation.
Okay, that's interesting. It's because I know sometimes people with MBAs that they're in startups they come in later as opposed to going very early. Do you know? Because I think the skill sets it's a lot more advanced than perhaps what they need at the beginning. How do you find being the founder with an MBA? Do you have mental conflicts ever?
I can see why maybe a lot of skill sets we learn in business school are really for large businesses, especially like finance, operation. But then we also actually acquire a lot of skill set about like running startups, like basic things about marketing, how to think about business model, how to tell a story. And I also think the network also helps for us to find investors and mentors, which are very important for our startup to grow.
No, it's fantastic. So I think it's whenever you have an academic background, people assume that is how you think about things. But obviously, an MBA and some of the master's programs are more about learning the practical skills, aren't they? So I'm glad it does you well. So from there, it's what's the situation with CapCo? I've seen you've been through Antler's program and the Harvard Business School Innovation Lab. Did they have a massive impact on you?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, the Endler program is where we got started. We got funded by Endler. That's how we set up the company. So the Harvard Innovation Program was really a program I was doing during my MBA. They have a venture incubation program. And the project I work on was basically the project that led to CapCo. So I was trying to solve a very similar type of question. The question that I've been trying to look into for the past 2 or 3 years. And then CapGo is when we really set up the company.
Oh, fantastic. So what would you say from your experience, what was Antler, working with Antler like? So
Right.
it's like,
Yeah.
what did you think of the Antler program in general?
Right. Yeah, I think it's helpful. I think it's helpful in several ways. So first, they have regional programs. So I think their terms are different across different regions. I think it's particularly helpful for first-time founders because for first-time founders to do things, to do a startup full-time and quitting their job actually requires some conviction, right? It's not that easy for a lot of people doing that for the first time. So another program actually provides some validation, which is very useful for a first-time founder. And then also it puts you in the community with other founders and then give you some publicity when it comes to news release and different things. So it's definitely helpful for first-time founders for sure. But because I've done my MBA, so I didn't learn a lot of like new information from the program because I know about marketing and fundraising before. But otherwise, I think you can learn that from that program too.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's interesting because I saw a post today from somebody on LinkedIn who was saying about the difference of longer term thinking And it's like with a startup, it's like you can't move in centuries, you've got to move in days. And I think that's one of the things, obviously, for an MBA, you're thinking about what's the consequences of this. It's certainly in the next quarter, but probably the next couple of years. And then for a startup, you're thinking, what's the impact for this next week? That may have been, for some people, one of the key things to learn how to think like a startup founder.
For sure, for sure. It's a totally different mentality. So going to that environment basically helps you shift you to that mentality.
So it's a strange, interesting journey going from city to a startup. You've said that the idea came from working in city. So from that, is that idea applicable to everybody, do you think, or has it got like a limited appeal for large organizations?
Right. It actually appeals to almost everybody. And then I can go more in depth about the problems. So I guess the problem I was trying to solve initially was this manual data search and collection. So the idea is when I was in banking, we have to basically do a lot of searches and populate data into a spreadsheet. An example was in 2017. At the time, Trump had a tax cut, which gives like some new treatment for foreign cash for large companies so they can bring the cash back to the US. And then the senior people in my group asked the analysts to basically pull foreign cash number for the entire S&P 500, so 500 companies. But because foreign cash number is a unstructured data, it's not in any of the databases. So we have to go to every single filings, like annual report of these 500 companies and do control Fs. And there are like 3 or 4 different keywords we can do control F for because different company code that differently. So literally it took 5 analysts a week to basically populate a spreadsheet of 500 companies and their foreign cash number. And then I thought that could be automated. So that was the original problem statement. But then later, what I realized was these manual data collection is prevalent in many industries. Because later, when I went into education tech, we have to do business development. I need to pull a list of like target companies in Taiwan and then figure out their revenue number, their CEO name, their business model, their target audience. Those are also manual searches of unstructured data that we couldn't find in any databases. So I realized people in all the industries experience a similar sort of problems, but just with different data and different purposes.
Ah, I see that. I think you're the first person who can attribute Trump as an instigation for a startup idea that I've heard, certainly in
Right.
a positive sense. So it's
Right.
very interesting. So from sorting unstructured data, is that what CapCo's core purpose is for somebody?
So the core essence of it initially is essentially automating this gathering and collection of data, especially unstructured data. But we can also gather structured data. So the idea is you can pull like 10 companies, 20 companies, you say like revenue, CEO, in one click, we fill the entire table for you. It could be both structured and unstructured. Yeah.
Okay. So that could be internal, external at that point. It wouldn't matter the source of that information. Do you search the web for people, or do you have like pre-existing data sets?
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently, we're actually doing mostly from external data sources. So CapCo is basically a spreadsheet, or you can call that a table. You fill in the headers of the table, and in one click, we fill the entire table for you. So you put like company name, 10 company names, you put different information like so email, revenue number, and we pull that all for you in one click. And the idea is basically we connect it to several external data sources, including like Google, Bing, email databases, and then it's all integrated into our system. And also, you can upload your own documents as well. You can upload your own PDF as well. But most of our use cases are actually pulling from external data sources.
I can imagine for smaller startups, early stage companies, certainly bootstraps, they're probably thinking at this point that they don't even have an idea of how to articulate the problem effectively yet. But obviously, for bigger companies, they've had this pain point every day. So, who would you say from that? Because there's such a broad appeal. Who's like today's target customer?
Honestly, that's a great question. And it's actually a great point leading to the product hunt story. The idea was initially when I thought about the problem, we wanted to target large enterprises. But then because we did well with product hunt launch, and because Product Hunt has mostly SMB founders and product managers, so the people who actually turn out to use our product and pay for it are the SMB founders, and then who turn out to become our current target because we already have them, and that distribution works. And then we haven't figured out distribution for large enterprises because we don't have the group of enterprise sales yet. So currently our target users are SMB founders. But the hope is in the long term we can reach enterprise.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic because I've heard that people articulate the story in a similar way, where they didn't expect Product Hunt to be successful. They went there for a badge of honor to go to larger companies, and like, hang on a minute, this is actually quite popular here. So let's take it from there. So if somebody was to come along, you've said about the CEOs and the sales parts, how much time do you think you'd be able to save them?
Sure. It actually depends on the scale. The larger things they want to pull, the more time we can save them. So I can give you two examples. An example that SMB founder use our tools for are actually for lead generation and qualification. The idea is they want to pull a list of target customers they want to reach out to. And then they want to know their information so they can filter the ones that should be their target and write a customized message to them and also pull their email information. If they have 10 companies and they want to pull these four different information, it's like 40 searches, right? For us, it takes 20 seconds. But if they do it by themselves, it probably takes 2 hours. But then if they want to pull a list of 100 companies, right, times four fields, that's 400 searches, right? So the more they try to search, the more time we can save. And if they only want to search one information, right, then they do a Google search. Then we don't really provide much value. But the more thing,
Yeah.
the more value.
No, I can see that because if I was to try and search you now, I would need to go to different search engines. I would need to find different things, and I might be able to find a snippet of information from Antler and a snippet of information from somewhere else that's got your profile. Perhaps there's some old things from City floating around or something on the internet that no one's taken away yet. But even still, for you now, you would be very difficult to find sufficient information on. So just enable them to have rich information, I think, solves the first part of the problem. And then obviously the speed is the second part. It's a clever way of doing things. It sounds like it fits in what's called account-based marketing, where somebody, anything from there and larger, account-based marketing, traditionally, you might have 100 companies you want to target. So when you're first looking, you might say it's 250 companies. Like I suppose from City, you've got S&P 500 would be an easy place to start. And you say, who's got a new CFO in the last 6 months or whatever it might be, and go through a list that way and find out, look, these are the people to target. But for smaller businesses, they don't have a clue necessarily where to start. And I think that's where, if you were, are you able to now go through a list, create a list, and then go through and then qualify and sort that list with additional data?
Yeah, for sure. So a common workflow for these SMBs are they use our tool to basically create a list of, say, like 100 companies. Or if they already have a list, they just paste them into our table. And then basically you can ask all sort of information in that table, like CFO name, when did that CFO start his or her job, CFO email, and other qualification information like the size of the company. And then in one click, we fill the entire table for you. And then it's particularly useful, as it turns out, to SMBs because a lot of people never use these heavy lifting tools like Apollo or Clay. They find them too difficult to use because they're like really powerful but very hard and expensive. But then SMB founders want something simple and easy to use. So they find CapCo to be super helpful in that way.
Okay. So what's the long-term plans for CapCo? Is it going to be sheets, isn't it, primarily? Could you use it inside Excel?
Yeah. So we have a Google Sheet add-on, and actually we build our own table. So people come into our table. That's actually like 95% of our users use our own proprietary table. They like our table because it's much simpler than a Google Sheet because our table, you only need to fill in the headers. In one click, the table is filled. Versus Google Sheet, you have to write functions. So the long-term goal is it's about our own table. And then the longer vision, right? There are actually two parts. The first part is in terms of business, we want to expand to large enterprises and help them to automate these many data searches in one click into a table. And then from a product perspective, it's more that we think table will be the next spreadsheet with AI. So the idea is the difference between a table and a spreadsheet is actually the formula. So table plus formula equals spreadsheet. But then with AI, you can actually replace a formula by writing some prompt. And then you just need to find the right UI and UX for it. And we think it's about writing the prompt in the headers. So you can manipulate data basically off the entire table. And then you can do a lot of things the spreadsheet can do not by writing functions, but writing very simple language. So then, yeah, people can use our tool to build like applications, workflows as well in the long term.
Yeah, I could 100% see that. I've been consultant with small businesses for 13 years or so. I've been consulting with them a long time, and in that time, I've developed consultant workflows. And we've got in a marketing strategy, I think we've got 8 or 9 different Excels that need filling out with multiple pages. It's horrible. But anyway, that type of thing, it's I can see 100% where you're coming from. Of that data that comes out is usually okay, but it's the horrible, tedious process of getting it in and getting it put in a way that you can actually understand what you're supposed to write, or as you say, the formula that goes into it. So changing it into a prompt is a fantastic way of doing it for people. It's a lot more simple.
Yeah, that's the hope, to simplify the whole spreadsheet experience so people can build like automation workflows, gather data without having to be like a technical pro of an Excel monkey, which I used to be, but then we hope that everyone can basically leverage AI and spreadsheet easily.
100%, I can totally see that. Because when I was looking at CapCo in the beginning, I saw that you had an MBA and CapCo looked to be like an Excel spreadsheet add-on. And I was thinking there's going to be like somebody doesn't do an MBA and then stop there. Do you know what I mean? This isn't going to be a micro SaaS. I was like, I wonder what the long-term plan is. You picked a beachhead to land on, and from there you said, we're in now, let's go and take over. So it's interesting because I think you're right with the way you're going about doing it. It makes a lot of sense for people, especially if later on, sometime soon, you're able to say to people who don't know, that they say, I want to have this type of information, have a little conversation with an assistant on your platform, and it says, look, you should be looking for this and this. And then, right, okay, thanks, let's do it. And then all of a sudden the full table gets, the heading's done for them. That I think would be the next step of simplicity, because somebody like me comes along, I'm thinking, right, I know I need this information, but if you said about finances or other things, I'll be very confused.
Oh, so are you saying the next sort of experience that you hope for is we can generate these headers, or is that what you mean, or
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
talking
no,
about something?
100%. So what I could imagine happening long term is I come into CapGo, I've signed in, you say, welcome to CapGo, here's the dashboard, here's a quick little onboarding tutorial of something that's going on. What information do you want? And I type in, I want to know the CEOs of the fastest growing unicorns in Silicon Valley. Sam Altman would come up with this, that, and the other. And then it would say, this is information that you would want. This is information that's useful. And then it'll populate the table with all of those people who would be able to be in that category. And I think from there, it would be a simpler step than me trying to figure out. We're working with small businesses. Often they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
Do you
Yeah,
know?
that's a
So
great question. Yeah.
to bridge
Yeah.
that part, and
Totally
that's,
agree.
yeah, I can imagine at that point it's just like mind would be blown. I can imagine my non-technical co-founder, she's a designer, she comes along, she types in all this information, and all of a sudden it turns up, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted, and in her head she obviously didn't know. So yeah,
Right.
it's great.
Yeah, for sure.
So with it being on your own dashboard, obviously you'll have memory and other things. Long term, is this information is all stored for people, they're able to come back to it.
Yeah, for sure. We actually want that to be a database tool as well, that people can store their information. So currently, people use our tool to pull information, to process information, because we also have features where we can process information. Let's say you pull a lot of people's personal description, right, their intro, and then you can simply use our tool to, you can basically extract the school they went to, and then we'll just extract information. So they can use our tools to basically manipulate information like a spreadsheet, but in a much simpler way by just writing like prompt in the headers. So people already use that to collect information and process and manipulate data. In the long term, we hope that to be the database that people also store their data. So then it's easier for them to transform data, play around data, and then go back and check the data.
No, I can imagine it being. There was a term I'd heard recently, master data set. It's more of an ERP term. That's often what people don't have. They don't know, especially in smaller businesses, what their master data is. It'd be interesting if you have that, can I integrate CapGo with somebody else? Can I integrate this? So all of a sudden, it ends up being the source of truth across 10 different tools. So a marketing department doesn't have to worry about what finance is doing because it's all in one place.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. and then people can basically collaborate. And then in the past, you probably need people who are a pro of Google Sheet to be able to do it. But now, finance people, HR, everyone can basically come and collaborate in this workspace.
Yeah. I can remember working with a company before and they had about 200 people in their office. And the most important person in the room was the guy who used to do the Excels for them. Because there used to be a queue. How do I do this? How do I do that behind him? And there'd be sometimes 10 people, and you could see in his face, just like, will you just leave me alone? It's like, it's simple, Command F, or like real help desk simple questions to turn it off and back on. But then sometimes it was quite elaborate and he'd go and help them and figure it out. But yeah, I can imagine you replacing that guy, or at least making that guy's job a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. That's the hope, making everyone an Excel pro, a spreadsheet pro by using simple table.
What did you do to validate the idea?
So basically, through a few things. The first is I have been a power user of spreadsheet. I experienced the pain points myself. So I know to a certain extent it will be useful, at least to me. So I normally do a personal test to see if I like it. And that's also my personal thing about building product. I want the product to be useful for myself. And I want the product to be something that I enjoy using. Because building a startup is tough, right? If I don't enjoy the product I build, it's going to be tougher to basically keep on building. And then the second part is we also interviewed people basically in 3 or 4 different industries we think will find this product useful. We interview like VC investors because they normally need to screen a lot of companies. They do competitive analyses of industries. So basically they need to pull like companies information, CEO information, their business model, how much funding they raise. So that's one thing, one group of people that we talk to and ask them if they will find this tool useful. And then we also talk to like small business. We try to do lead generation, qualification. We will talk to consultants and bankers basically. And then we gather like different feedback and then also try to figure out which group that we need to target initially. So getting these feedback was very helpful for us to validate the idea. And lastly is we build a prototype in Google Sheet. It's like an MVP and we show people how to use it to see if they find it useful. So those are the things, basically personal test, interviews of early adopters, and also a prototype MVP.
Yeah, I can imagine talking to VCs and you're saying, "Can you? I just talk to you about my idea, please?" And usually I get a pitch deck. Do you know it? And you're like, "No, can you use my tool?" It's an interesting change of conversation, perhaps for them. It's a fantastic way of doing it. So
Yeah.
from there, obviously, you went into launch onto Product Hunt. You came, I think it was second of the day you came, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we actually launched two
To,
things. The first time was just CapCo, our web app. We got
yeah,
like first of the day. The second is our Google Sheet add-on. We call that lead gen sheet, and we got
yeah.
like second of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've had the two launches. You've had the first of the day and fifth of the week, and then it was second of the day. What was your hopes and aspirations when you went into it?
So I was nervous about launching on Product Hunt. My previous company launched on Product Hunt and did really well, but that was a 30 people team. We were more like a 3 people team at the time. And then I just didn't know like how people will react. So it was nervous. But then our hope is even if it doesn't work, we can launch another time. We can get some useful feedback. And another thing is sometimes I look at certain launches on Product Hunt, I felt like their product wasn't ready either. And then because they did well on their videos and then also their description, they can also get ranked pretty highly. So we thought there's nothing to lose, right? So then that's why we launched.
So, did you spend a lot of time preparing for it?
We spent actually like only 2 weeks. So we wanted to launch quickly to get like validations and user feedback. So basically for that 2 weeks, like we did a few things. Number one is we want to make sure our product is ready, right? Our table is ready where people can put in the headers and build the table. So that user experience has to be complete so that we can get enough useful feedback. And then we also built like the payment system so we can also test if there are people who are willing to pay. So build like the product so they can validate the whole thing. And second is also to make sure my account on Product Hunt is still active because I haven't used it for a long time. So I made some comments to make sure Product Hunt think this account is valid and active. And I also find a hunter, which is another founder I know. He is pretty active on Product Hunt and launched product 3 times. So basically, we ask him to be the hunter for our tool. And then I think lastly, find different groups on like different social media like LinkedIn, WhatsApp, WeChat, who are founders and who are active on Product Hunt. So then we got into those groups. So then we prepare that when the Product Hunt launch, that we can basically ask people to check out our product and vote for us.
Yeah, okay, because it's the thing, isn't it? It's when you're launching, you've got two objectives. Some people have. Some people want to validate their idea, and some people just want to have a badge. And obviously, to get a badge, it can be a significant difference because everybody who might have upvoted you could be people who won't come back on day two, and that kind of defeats the purpose when you're trying to grow a company. So I think what you're saying is the right way of to gone down. You know, give us a check out and support us if you like us, as opposed to look, please upvote me and I'll vote you back later on. So from there, did you have a lot of people come through on your two launches? Was it more traffic or
Yeah.
less than you expected?
So honestly, the first one has a lot more traffic than I expected. The second one has less traffic, fewer traffic than I expected.
Okay.
And then looking back, I thought there are a few reasons. The first time launch, we got indexed by a lot of directories, or like these AI tools directories. You're not going to get that in your second launch, right?
Yeah,
Because they're
you're already
already
there.
indexed. Yeah, and then the first time launch, we also got a lot of KOLs. They found us on Product Hunt. KOLs means like influencers on LinkedIn or Twitter. They also publicize our tools on newsletters free because we rank very highly on Product Hunt. The second time, I thought it was first like we didn't get the benefit of indexing from directories, and then the second reason was it was a Google Sheet product. What we realized was a lot of people don't know how to use Google Sheet add-on, especially when they never used it before. So the most common feedback from our users is we couldn't find your add-on because they thought it's a Chrome extension, but it's
Right.
actually in the Google Sheet under the extension. A lot of people, if you never used an add-on, you couldn't even find it.
Yeah.
So the most common feedback is, I think you have a bug because after I install it, I couldn't find it in my Chrome. So then I realized maybe these Google Sheet extension, part of Hunt might not be the best place to launch. Maybe it's still the best place to launch like Chrome extension or just like web app. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've seen somebody launch a Chrome extension before, and he done really well with it when he's looking to launch more. So I can see the way you've got that view of it, and I think as well, obviously, I looked at CapCo, and from the video, from the content I'd seen from you, I was like, I don't use Google Sheets, I use Microsoft. So that was perhaps another chunk of the market who is saying, I don't use the foundation of what your tool's built on. So it would have
Yeah.
been awkward in that sense too. So I can see that there's a few limitations from it. You've still done really well from there, as long as you've got some feedback, and it helps you tailor more of your focus, because next time for Product Hunt, perhaps it's main product releases as opposed to add-ons. Do you know? Because I've seen like Superbase, they've released 11 times. The last time, I think 2,000 upvotes in a day. But
Oh, wow.
they've been, some of them have done, the first one was good, then they've had some other ones that weren't quite as good, etc. And that's probably the same sort of thing where it's not core feature and it's not appealed to the full audience and other things. So that the point is not to be disheartened by that, because I think it's a limited view of your product anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
So from there, are you planning on having Product Hunt as part of your continued go-to-market, or is it just a validation for new features? How do you view it?
So it's definitely useful for validating new features, but then it's also a very powerful way for us to acquire users because it's by far the cheapest way to acquire users and pretty high quality users to our website. But then the issue with Product Hunt is you cannot launch every day. So you have to launch like every half a year or something. So it will be continuously a very important part, but then it's not going to be like as repeatable as other channels.
Yeah. You could use CapGo to find people, or could you use it to find people who use Product Hunt?
But yeah, you can actually use it to find people and products that are listed on Product Hunt.
Yeah. So the next time it might be a bit of direct outreach to everybody. Here, I found you through our tool. Interesting way of doing things. For longer term, how do you envisage your long-term go-to-market from here now? Do you think you're ready to start looking at that, or are you still a bit premature?
Yeah, in longer term, we already started to try different other ways like SEOs or some search, and then we're basically testing whichever channel works the best. Currently, the best channel by far is Product Hunt, but because it's not repeatable on a daily basis, So then it looks like we have a strategy around SEO that can work decently well because our table provides a lot of useful information. And sometimes we ask our users if you want to publicize your table. Once they publicize the table, some other people might be able to search it from Google and they will find that table to be useful because it's a very organized way to present information.
Yeah, that's quite clever. Yeah, because I suppose if I was to have a similar query and it's a generic one, and even if you were to display that and perhaps hide the email, and you have to sign up to get the email, it might be an
Mhm.
interesting way of getting people to sign up. It's clever. It's
Yeah,
I think long because obviously SEO is more of a long term strategy, isn't it? It's once it starts to work, it really works. But up
right.
until then, the influence and other things. So is that are you doing like influencers on YouTube and other places?
Yeah, so we're trying influencers on Twitter and LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
But influencer is also a hit or miss thing because sometimes certain posts get like popular more than you expected. Sometimes it doesn't get popular as much.
Mm-hmm.
And some influencers don't have genuine fans.
Yeah.
Some do. It's not as like clean maybe as Google Ads, and it's hard to track basically the facts. But then a lot of other founders in similar space found influencers to be useful, but you really need to have a process to find the right influencers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I can understand that. It's very difficult, I think, for a lot of startups because you're trying to obviously you've had investment, but at the same time you don't want to start spending a lot of money on acquiring customers because one, you might be acquiring the wrong ones, and then two, it might just be that the cost of getting those customers is too high versus the lifetime value. So at that point, it
Right.
becomes quite awkward, isn't it? So it's nice to find the balance. Do you have a formalized go to market or is it on spreadsheets and Excels and stuff?
Yeah, so basically, even go to market
Yeah,
strategy,
like
right?
have you developed a formalized one or is it like a one page?
So currently, we're still basically experimenting and testing different things. We also try to see if Google Sheet or Excel could be a channel for us to bring some users to use our add-on, but still in the testing phase. Yeah.
I can imagine from one perspective, it's a lot easier for you to sell to bigger companies because you can use your tool to find them. Getting the balance right between the sort of the startup founder versus the larger company. But I suppose you'd be able to find a full list of everybody who's been through like YC or different accelerators, Antler, and other programs. If you were to consolidate all that information, you've got a couple of thousand new customers every few months that you could be targeting.
Mhm.
If you're able to get somebody on the maybe even on the phone, go the
Right.
old school way of direct sales to
Right.
them because
Right.
obviously it depends on the type of company that if that's their business model, quite
Right.
a
Right.
acquisition strategy, then it would be the same. That's
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about your tool and the sort of the usefulness across the board, and obviously the quicker you demonstrate value to somebody else is perhaps through you using it yourself. So if I
Mhm.
can remember the first time I got an AI generated email for sales, I was thinking, oh, that's very clever. And then I clicked on the link and it was like £500 a month. So I'm selling a product that's £2. Like I can't use that. Like the targeting was completely wrong, but the email was interesting.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, we would love maybe in the future to hear some of your feedback and suggestions. I've already heard a lot of great ideas in our conversation. Yeah.
Fantastic, definitely. So I think from there, is there anything else you'd like to go over to discuss?
Not in my mind, actually. I think we went through a lot of key points.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay. Well, I've got two more questions, then I suppose for you.
sure.
One is obviously from city to a startup. If somebody else was contemplating it, what would your advice to them be?
So when I think about career, the most important thing is you want to be the top of your game. But then to be top of your game, it has to be something you like and something you can do really well. And then the best way to figure that out, I think, is to look at your current job and then break that into tasks. And then I think for most people, I think vast majority of people don't like 100% of the tasks they're doing for that job, right? A good job, maybe like you like 80% of it, you hate like 20% of it. A bad job, maybe like you like 30% of it, but you hate 70% of tasks. But then you just identify the tasks you really like and then see if you can find something about it. It's like when I was working in city in banking, I realized I didn't really enjoy making deals. I didn't really take that much pride of helping a company raise like debt or equity. I took more pride about making a tool, making a spreadsheet automation, and I enjoy that more. So then I identified that as signals that maybe there's a career where I can have like 80% of that versus maybe in banking, I can only do 30% of that with 70% being deal making. So that's a way for me to basically find a job that I like more and potentially can do better, which is to break your current job into tasks and identify the ones you like.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because what you're in essence talking about is founder market fit. Do you have a fit within yourself that you would love to do, and can you do that hopefully better than anyone else in the world? And if those two things align and people are prepared to pay for it, then you've got something to invest some time in. It's very interesting. It's a good way for doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then the other sort of point would be if somebody was to be starting a business now, obviously the economic climate perhaps has changed from when you were first starting, etc., etc. What would your advice to be to somebody looking to start something today?
I think the advice would be validate your idea first and then get user feedback. I think those are basically cliches, but then what I found founders, especially first time founders, the most common mistake they made was I think there are different type of mistakes, right? But the most common is that they start building a thing that's like nobody used.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think a lot of first time founders tend to have these more rosy, big ideas, but hard to monetize. Versus I feel like the serial entrepreneurs normally start with an idea that really hits the pain point of like some customers and so that people can pay quickly. Yeah. But then at the end, I think you just need to start working on it, right? Because if you're smart, you can learn and figure things out in the process. I think that's the most important.
'Cause I think sometimes you're right that I've seen a lot of people who one of the reasons that they've perhaps failed is they were building too far down the roadmap to start. And it's you take one step at a time, and that's where we're success. A lot of the successful founders I've spoken to, they, as you say, identified one pain point, spent a couple of weeks building a solution for that one pain point, and then decided if they were prepared to build solutions for more pain points depending on the feedback they got. And often that's been something that they've done and they've done very well. Just stay focused, and then from being focused, you can spend more time on the glitz and the glam and making things nice, and these are the things. It's the right place to start. So what would you say your biggest mistake has been so far then, that you would avoid next time?
I think it was talking to customers, like getting like interviews from customers too late in the process. Because when I was working for the previous company I worked at, I was managing the entire analytics. So I look at user data. And I always thought by looking at user data, you get exactly what they're doing, exactly the issue that they have. But then what I didn't realize is actually talking to our customers who use our product face to face, you actually get a lot more information than just looking at the data. Because you might recognize them doing task A, right? But knowing why they do task A, what they do next, what kind of things they did in the past, what other features they're looking for, is a lot more helpful than just looking at the data. I would do like customer interviews earlier, but then there's something I still didn't figure out because when I reach out to even our paid customers, I don't get like very high response rate. So then it's something that we're working on to try to talk to more paid customers.
It is very difficult for some people to get that type of feedback because obviously you're in a position where you want to incentivize it, but you don't want to incentivize it too much because all of a sudden you might be devaluing your own product. So it's what can you give in return? And obviously when you don't have, in the very beginning, you've not got thousands and thousands of users to speak to, you need to get that balance right. And I can imagine for a lot of people it's very tough. It's a difficult obstacle. And I've not seen anyone who would say, I've cracked this nut yet. So I can't say whether this guy tried this and this worked. You just have to get out there and message everybody and let them know it's really you. It's not an automated you pretending. It's not an AI bot pretending to be you. I really do care. Give me your feedback, please. I can remember reading Google Design Sprint's book years ago when it first came out, and they were saying something echoed the same sentiment of what you said. It's speaking to those customers. I think they said after five customers or so, the feedback became very similar from there, but then obviously speaking to them meant that they got the proper feedback, and that was how Harry Potter was born, because she'd been rejected by hundreds of people, and then one day they'd said that one of the executives she's been speaking to, he gave it to his daughter and she was begging for more, and it was like as soon as you put it in front of the right person, they start begging for more. And I suppose that was an indication of a market fit for her, that all of these old people sat there thinking, who wants to read about wizards? Thinking, I'm not interested. So that's fantastic. I think from there, unless you've got more things you'd like to go over, about what to call it.
Right.
Thank you for your time, and look forward to speaking to you again soon. And then perhaps in 6 months' time we can talk again about the progress you've made for CapCo. I think it's an interesting tool that has a lot of value to be given, especially for certain types of roles and certain organisations. It might save a mishire and potentially a misfire for a startup as well.
Thanks, Tyrone. Thank you.
So have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon.
Yeah, see
And
you.
then
Thank you.
and if you've enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. If you've got any questions that you would like me to ask people, please feel free to do so. And then outside of that, I hope you have a good day and you've got success in your startup, whatever it might be. Thank you and goodbye.